So this is the very first Tier 1 Dust2 game since the map was put back in the pool in April. This is Mouz versus BetBoom. I believe this is at the BetBoom tournament. And I want to take a look at how teams are playing this differently at the high level and what adjustments they're making into CS2. And I'm going to start making a little bit more of this content on my Patreon. So if you want more, go ahead and sub over there. But otherwise, let's take a look. We've got a stack B here for Mouz to begin with. And one of the things you'll see high level teams do a lot is they're not just going to stay in a B stack and hope the T's come their direction. They're actually going to start getting aggressive, looking for information, because if the T's are coming B, maybe Xerxin makes contact, gets one and dies, and then you bait the T's to hit B where you've got 4 players. Then when he sees nothing, they're going to pivot over to middle and try and make contact there, but perfect timing from BetBoom with that flash just before Mouz were actually set up. And then they go back and they actually look for this push into tunnels from Xerxin, which they find. So this is a really well played round from BetBoom. And I thought Jimfat might actually just turn that one back right around, but actually it ends up being a 4-for-1. So really clever play from BetBoom. Not only the mid play makes a lot of sense, but also they move back and catch that player pushing into tunnels that you're expecting. If there's 3 mid, there's a good chance someone pushed into tunnels, and instead of just going mid to B where you might get shot down from CT or your opponents might heavy rotate and catch you off guard, they just go back B tunnels and catch what would be max 1B, even if he wasn't in tunnels at the time, right? So if we skip a bit further forward, I should just fast forward this because the round thing doesn't work. Zorte gets the scout. Actually not going to go for a 4, so I was looking at the stats a couple of days ago, and Dust2 is one of the best maps in terms of CT4 success rate of any map in the pool back in CSGO. But it's still going to be up in the air whether or not you should necessarily be forcing on this map. You definitely want to be buying scouts if you're going to be forcing, but it ends up being kind of, you're kind of guessing, you know, do you gamble stack long and then they go B and you're screwed. This is a really gamble heavy map, so I can see why forcing might not be the play on this map either. But this is just going to be, you know, it's just going to end out trying to get as much damage as possible as a CT, especially on a round where you saved and they got 2 kills, which is pretty much, I think 2 kills is even, right? That's not a bad job, not an amazing job, but I mean, if you have USPs only, I think you're pretty happy with 2 kills. You're not feeling too bad about that. But first gun round, a lot of the time teams are going to try and establish dominance on long on the first gun round, but BetBoom really just didn't have a good spawn for it. They had the 1 spawn, so they sent him out alone, and unluckily for them, you don't necessarily expect an op on the first gun round on a 3rd round buy. But because Torshi got 4 kills so far, he actually was able to afford that, which is definitely something worth keeping in mind, taking a look at when you know who their opper is. Is that opper, does he have multiple kills? What gun did he have on 2nd round if you can actually see it? It actually makes a big difference because, yeah, and that peak was perfect. He probably had the best spawn for that too. That is one of the reasons one of the things I really dislike about Dust2. Is just that the opper has the best spawn, goes for a play, and it ends up working out because of that spawn. But this is a kind of cool play. Xerxin tossing a nade down to blow out that smoke. Not the bottom of the, oh, that's sick, dude. So it doesn't blow out the bottom of the smoke where someone might actually be posted on him, but it blows out the top of the smoke where most likely someone, if they're there, is looking the other direction. Maybe they're getting covered by someone else. That's actually really nice. I wonder if that blows out every smoke or just that smoke that lands just like that. But Torshi up on Cat. So I'll say this a million times, like, you're not really supposed to have a Cat player, but once you establish long control, having your opper go back Cat and look for a kill on someone if they don't use their utility correctly is really, really effective. And then he can get aggressive if he wants, but he can also easily drop off and pivot. The problem is they probably heard him drop off. I believe that sound is audible from where they were at the time. Oh, here's the run boost. Okay. I believe that sound is audible. So they might have heard him drop off, and that's going to actually, you know, prompt them to want to go A even more. And then Shu here is alone. Oh, it would be sick if Brawlin had a flash for him, that would be amazing. But without a flash, he kind of just has to take the duels, which, I mean, that's reality. Sometimes you just have to take aim duels. And then they're just going to go for the retake. It really depends on Jimfat here, though. He needs to get at least 1 kill, and that's going to prompt the T's. Now they're in kind of awkward spots, right? Now Siren he can't really go back towards Cat, but he doesn't want to be here. He should at worst get traded here, and now Nafany's completely alone. Dust2 really is a map where I feel like people underestimate how good a retake can be. You do need some strength, at least on one side. You really need to be winning that duel on Cat where JimFat got that kill. I believe it was JimFat, right? But if you can open up the map with that kill, especially in lower numbers, it becomes very awkward for the T's to hold on, right? And a lot of the time what you'll want to do as the T's is you'll try and double up back on Cat, but because there was someone CT as well that was, I believe, putting a bit of pressure as they came up, they didn't really want to take that duel back again, so I feel like they might have even played a little too scared there. Maybe they did need to double back on Cat, but actually, as I say that, there also wasn't, the bomb wasn't planted for Cat. I think they planted safe. They were worried about getting killed from elevator as they planted, so. Probably needed to stay only one on Cat, and that's just one of those duels, right? So that, by the way, is a really effective nade. It doesn't do any damage here, but I feel like that's actually one of the highest damage nades on the map. And the return nade that the T's threw is also one of the highest damage on the nades on the map, at least. I looked into this quite heavily in 2021, and that nade did a lot of damage because CTs do love playing like this. And this is something, by the way, at lower levels, this is really, really effective. Some things I feel like they make a big difference if you're playing as really good players or you're playing at a lower level. It makes a big difference in how you might want to play the game. But this is a play, if you can get to it, that is always strong. Usually you don't jump off like that, though. Actually, that makes sense, though. So when I'm thinking about Dust2, I'm thinking a lot about the old doors. And with the old doors, what you would do is you would actually toss this smoke down and you would jump onto this box and then you could jump up. And that'll still work really well, but with the new doors, he comes back around here, and then he's able to get slightly better support from this player here. So I guess it depends really if you know that your opponents are busting in, or if there's going to be a smoke doors. I still really like this play. You just drop it down, jump up, but you can do probably a bit of both. It makes sense to do a bit of both. But you can have this smoke land pretty deep, so they basically come out here having to fight you. And then if they do something like throwing a smoke flash off this corner here, which is hard to do through a smoke, by the way, but let's say they can line that up, you can always just drop down here anyways, right? It's not like a big deal to drop back down. Usually what I find is your gun is out just in time here, and then you can get yourself a quick kill. You will notice that, you know, good teams are not going to be rushing long without a good spawn, right? There's another nice nade. You know, the value of nades is kind of underrated, I feel like, on CT side for the average player. Not that, like, I mean, pro teams know this, but I feel like people really underestimate how good a nade is because all it needs to do is, like, 12 damage, and you've essentially turned your M4 into, it's literally better than an AK at that point. So I just backed up because there's something a lot of teams have been doing that I've seen in pugs that's really effective, but that's not exactly. So what I've seen a lot of teams doing, they throw a smoke that's a little bit deep, and then they delay, and then they molly behind it, and it'll take out this whole area. But I guess that molly works really well. Just like the bigger mollies in CS2 means you can push out people from this entire doors area, and then you can walk in. Of course, you can get spotted from someone behind the car, but that's not the most common spot. Here, I really like this as an anti-eco play, by the way. This is just really what's one of the main ways you lose on an anti-eco? Your opper gets chased down. He gets run down, right? And then if he gets run down, he gets trapped, which I've seen happen many, many times. Then the B player can get kind of, he can get isolated or trapped between tons and B. But instead, if you play a rifler that's kind of playing off contact, you kind of bait them into that type of play, and then you just catch them off guard. And at this point, they're just going to roll over the rest of the round. Pistol, I mean, even upgraded pistol, no armor. CT should be pretty comfortable with that. But big note, 2 rounds with lots of players alive. I mean, all 3 rounds have lots of players alive. So they're already stacking up a lot of money, which is so important in this game to stack up. In CS2 specifically with MR12, to stack up lots of money early on so you don't get trapped. Now, I've seen a lot of teams that molly fast mid doors. That's been happening a lot in pugs, which I think is, I don't know, I feel like a lot of teams are probably going to start running that in all games, but definitely in pugs it makes a ton of sense to throw, just because your teammates are going to be much worse at dealing with these sorts of aggressions. This is another standard Dust2 aggression, walking in with that opper. This is just going to be strong forever. And I want to take credit for this play, by the way. I'm going back to this because I feel like I never saw anyone do this, but in CS2, this play makes even more sense. That smoke on Xbox covers so much room, and because you have the spawn now, you can just jump up on a cat. This is so effective. This is dummy effective. Now, you should be losing that duel a lot of the time, but I feel like after his teammate got the kill in tunnels, I would have preferred him falling back, but it's not like, you know, not going to say it's a misplay. But that's just confidence, right? Especially Dust2. To be fair, on Dust2, more than any other map, it kind of turns into an aim map if you have two teams that are playing well. So, you know, the confidence and the desertion, right? So he was like 1.4 rating at the last event. I can see why he had all that confidence. It's a really nice play, though, if you catch people as they're going up cat. And Torshi's actually going to re-aggress into tunnels, which... Oh, that's a nice shot. Okay. I was like, nobody's going to expect the re-aggress, and he just gets dominated. Jimfat... Oh, my God. This guy is so good at the game. The problem is he needs to get 2 there at least, or they're just going to have to save. And it's pretty unfortunate, too, because they lose the op in B, so they can't recover it. I feel like if the op was dead like mid and they could recover it, they'd probably be not even going for exits maybe. But here they have lots of money, like a good amount of money, not tons of it. So they can look to go for exits, right? And oh, a nice little interaction here. So Shuhei doesn't throw this molly. It's actually Brawlin that throws this molly, which means there's no reason for them to really expect Shuhei to be coming from T spawn still. And not only that, it pushes these people into the open. The molly just landed a tiny bit less deep than he was expecting. So he gets killed, but that's actually a really clever play. It also makes it feel like there's 2 players outside B instead of 1. But you can see, I don't think they weren't really going for the round win there at all. Like sorry, was that Shuhei? I believe it was Shuhei. Even if he had got that kill in the player tunnels, I don't think they're really winning that round. I don't think they really have time to win that round. There's the boost. Can I find the player? Yeah, the bomb was a little hard. There was the boost, but I think Zorte had a bad spawn. See, this is why Dust2 really is problematic. This spawn sucks, right? And it's just so happens that your opper has this spawn. So he can't, like, yeah. You can't really get the timing right. I do think this like fast down mid is going to be even more effective now because this molly is really hard to see through. And because, you know, with the boost and the molly also, gets both sides of the doors really easily. And you have this little advantage. I'm making a video on Dust2 and I almost forgot this existed. This is like, really, it feels kind of significant. It makes it much harder to actually control mid when this shadow at the back there, because you want to be as far from this wall as possible generally. And Nafity is going to spot that shadow, and Zershin, I don't think he has any idea unless there's a counter shadow. Do they both see shadows there? I don't think so. No, he just, yeah. You just can't stay there for very long, right? Do they have an op at all? Yeah, they have the op. Game helper. Makes sense. But now they've got full, like, out mid control, which makes this pretty awkward for the CTs. They just have to kind of double up and hope that things go their way. And hope they can win some aim duels, right? Re-aggress into mid. Molly a little too deep, it looks like. So he's going to think mid's empty. But he's not going to... He still can't peek towards mid, right? The T's just... I feel like once the T's are in this type of situation, it feels like they probably have a slight advantage if they have decent, like, execute ideas. Because look at where the CTs are, right? Like, they're not in long doors. They're not on cat. The T's could easily, like, fake A and come out mid to B. The rotate mid to B is going to be so long. Now, more often than not, CTs are going to have a player kind of in this area, like CT spawn to elevator area, that's going to be that quick rotate. But sometimes you just have to gamble that, like, that's not happening this round, and you just have that player, you have him in Goose instead. And if you gamble correctly, if you have a good read, it can still go pretty well. Ooh, I've seen this play a lot in Pugs. Oh, clean. Yeah, I've seen that play a lot in Pugs. You just drop through that smoke and grab that player CT. Really hard to deal with the way smokes land now. It's probably just one smoke that landed on the edge and he dropped into it. And then not only that, because you get into CT with that, you can also lock down the rotate. But the actual sight take has gone horrifically wrong. What went wrong there? So there's the drop. I think that's probably just one smoke from the T's, right? Why is that smoke black? No, it looks like two smokes here. So he gets the kill, but then Nafany was completely alone. And now with the bomb, we're going to have a second player that just runs out alone also. Oh boy. Yeah, I can see why this one went wrong. And then a really nice flash. That's a flash. I mean, that's not a lineup, the torch he throws there. That's just, you know, you kind of just toss it through the smoke and it doesn't need to be perfect. You know, the teammate goes through with it. If you don't have a flash, though, like if your team doesn't have a flash, dealing with that kind of CT is just about impossible. Just about impossible. And here, Zorte should just try and survive, but he's kind of screwed here. Yeah, dies after time too. So those I think they got 2 kills in that 2v3. I think that made a big difference in just how broke the T's are now. It's crazy how much of a difference just getting off to a good start means in on CT side of a more T-sided map, which I'm expecting Dust2 is going to be a pretty T-sided map, though. Might adjust slightly in CS2. Being able to nade the long A cross feels like a big deal. I'm really hoping they're going to change the spawns on this map, to be honest, to make it a little bit less random, because I don't think BetBoom has gotten very lucky in terms of spawns on gun rounds, right? I don't think they've had the right spawns to do the type of aggressions they want. They've got Chiron with the Hero AK, which used to be kind of a meme play. I feel like people like trash talk Furia for this type of play sometimes, or at least I feel like they used to. But I think it makes a lot of sense. You just keep the CT economy down, especially if you have enough money on most of your other players, which yeah, they don't. On at least a couple of your other players to have armor, so you can recycle the AK potentially. And it's Dust2, so on Dust2 you can kind of make a gamble, like a bit of a guess, and hope that you're right. And if you are right, you can kind of penetrate into the right spot and get something done with the solo AK. So they're just waiting around to go B. This isn't necessarily, by the way, this isn't something. In theory, this should work at every level, right? But the problem is that if your opponents don't respect you and they just push out long, then they're gonna learn that you're in tunnels unless you have someone. And I don't think they really had someone watching long the whole round. Unless they really respect that you could be just sitting outside long, they're gonna push stuff and they're gonna realize you're in tunnels. So that's one of those plays that I feel like works really well at a high level when both teams respect each other, because they could be anywhere and they could just be holding pushes waiting for something crazy. But if you're playing, especially if you're playing in a matchmaking game and, you know, someone's smurfing or something, they're just going to push everything and you really need to be watching every angle. But you guys know that already. So here, because there's no boost, they're able to get into into tunnels. The CTs are. You kind of have to have a couple players in tunnels most rounds to deal with that. And Desertion just scroll wheel there. I think he should have been getting that kill. Torji pulling off Torji plays. Does get 2. Makes it possible. Of course, the lower numbers with even players, so like 3v3, 2v2, 1v1, it just continually goes into the T's favor. So I've seen people kind of like, 3v3, why Shuhi? Why are you peeking that? Well, no, I mean, what are you going to do, right? Like, I've seen, I think teams are getting a lot more towards gamble stacking in these spots instead of like going for information plays like that. Because if you were to do something like gamble stack, like let's say Brawlin comes towards mid, and then you just double mid, then if the T's come out mid, you win the round, and if they don't, then, you know, saving makes a lot more sense. But I think in a 3v3, you'd probably still go for the retake anyways. So that play makes a lot of sense, just getting a little bit of information. If mid's empty, then you have like an insane advantage because you know they're hitting something soon, and you can basically get 2 players on whichever site they're hitting. And then if you lose the player, then that's when you're kind of like, yeah, they're basically gambling towards mid. And I see this as something that doesn't happen enough in pugs, by the way. Gambling off B. Everyone's like paranoid, like, well, what if they go B? We're just gonna lose the round. I can't leave B. I'm the B player, right? Which, sure, true. I mean, if you're at an advantage, you definitely don't want to be leaving B, right? But like, how often do your opponents walk out B with 0 utility? It's like never-ish, right? Especially if they have an advantage. Like, they're incentivized not to walk out B with 0 utility because you can just give the advantage right back, right? So you'll see like a lot of high-level players, they'll occasionally gamble off of B like that. Mirage as well. They do that on Mirage quite often in like 4v5s, or especially if you get down to like a 3v4 or a 3v5, right? Especially if your opponents have lots of utility. Like if you know they're light on utility, then maybe you think twice about that. But ooh, I like this setup. But BetBoom's a little too, yeah, they're not giving anything back. Yeah, I like that setup, but BetBoom's just not falling for it. Yeah. You know, Shuhei could have swung out there, and this is like that's almost like a blame F moment. Oh my god, Nafany's just picking him apart. I feel like this is like a blame F moment where it's like, God, blame F, why? Why didn't you just swing? You could have traded. And it's like, well, there's also the chance that he just gets insta-screwed right here if the swing, because Nafany's already looking there. It depends how much damage. If he knew Jimfat did 90 damage, odds are he'd probably peek out, but maybe not. I mean, because if there's a second player behind, then Shuhei's only ever getting one max, and he's getting traded like every time. And he might get 0 if Shuhei is, or if Nafany doesn't get hit for 80 there, right? He doesn't necessarily know. But if he hides and then Nafany thinks it's clear, he might walk by and then he can line up 2, which happens all the time. But man, Nafany just like, he's just working around that smoke, catching everybody in. So the danger of this, I've seen. There is a way that players have been, I've seen quite a few times in some FPL games that, oh my god, Brawlin. Okay, we're watching that one back. In FPL games that they double smoke now, but, you know, it's hard to get into this portion of the round with 2 smokes left up. So, you can see the reasoning. Oh my god. Okay. Kukli moment. Torshi does actually have an op, which is great, and he manages to save it, which is the most important thing. And here's the standard long utility. 1 flash high in front and 1 flash behind. Do they throw utility at long? What's their other utility at long? So, I mean, BetBoom finally had good spawns. You're going to see Shuhei's probably going to be throwing this molly. Oh, he's actually going to throw it at the doors. Okay. Usually people are mollying the bin now. Oh, but they had... So this is like the old school standard, right? So Shuhei's going to throw that molly at the doors. Brawlin is going to throw a molly off the wall once he sees that utility is being thrown. Problem is he doesn't have a second, like a third flash. I think this is one of those where I think when he wanted to peek out here, if there was a third flash, if someone had dropped Torji a flash and he had thrown a third flash, if he dropped it here, I guess, maybe he would have survived. But maybe this flash just lands too high, and because he was under, because you can get under this overhang, and I think you can kind of dodge some flashes. So maybe that's the reason for it. Actually, I'm interested. Let me take a look. I believe it is Siren. And this is one of the reasons you want to get out as quickly as possible, right? He's getting up close to the corner. No, actually, just the flash landed a little earlier. And you'll notice this smoke, by the way. This is a different smoke than most teams are throwing. This is a deep smoke. And that's why getting up to this corner is super important, because this smoke is super deep, and you can fight them. I think this is probably where you want it to land. Like, they have to come through the smoke, and then they can fight. Of course, they can get through it, but then to fall back, they're going to be taking damage as they fall back, right? And so if, was it Chiron that got here? No, it's Siren, right? Then what happens if Siren fights here and he doesn't get that kill and the player backs up, he can just swing out and kill that player as he's falling back as well, right? So it makes a lot of sense. But another thing that I don't see enough, competitive players do, player goes cat. I don't know, running cat with your knife. If he had an AK, I think he would probably play this a little bit differently. But look at what happens when you have long control and you get cat control. Now Nafany, like, they're scared of this play. They don't even really want to walk back on cat. They have to. It's really dangerous to walk back on cat. Torji's just going to end up dying here because Nafany's just waiting on cat, because you can't just sit on plat, right? If you're sitting on plat and your opponents just come up long and cat, I know I got that backwards, but if they come up both ways, you're just screwed, right? A molly from here will completely end your game, and then you can't even jump off the safety. And if you're holding from here, then they just know that they can take the site for free, right? So you're basically screwed at that point. After a couple nice shots, and this round's really over. And not boosted. Some teams do a lot of boosting, some teams do a lot less. And you've got the response that Mouz is going to go for the 4-man long hold, which, you know, is another bit of randomness in this game because spawns are randomized, right? Does your 4 long stack coincide with them having a long spawn? Because even on an anti-eco, I think teams generally will go long on their long spawns on an anti-eco. But not every team will, but a lot of teams will. Because, I mean, it's still not a bad idea. You have more utility than they're going to have, right? You have more firepower, better guns. Of course, you can lose the round. It's not that you can't. But you know where else you can lose the round? You can lose the round on Cat. You can lose the round on Cat too. But again, you'll notice, and this is something that CT teams, especially in CS2, they're very active, and especially on ecos or force buys, but just in general, teams on CT side are extremely active in modern CS, and they're not just going to take long and hold and like sit there all around with 2-3 players. They take long and then they go back Cat and Jimfat just blows them up. But that's not just Jimfat, right? That's help. His teammates are doing a lot there. Shui's going to toss a flash. They're going to catch them at that moment. The moment is important. This is the moment where BetBoom is this is where they're getting ready to take Cat. And that's really when you want to catch them. You catch them when they're in these areas. You don't want to catch them like here. You mean you can catch them here. But you don't want to catch them like, you don't want to fight them as they want to fight you, right? That's the problem. Like this fight, the T's can win that really well. You know, if they maul you off here, they can take Cat. They can sequentially take Cat really easily and make it almost impossible for you to get kills. But if you catch them in the open here, and there's a lot, because this is such a huge area, you have to go all through the open here, right? If you catch them in the open, it's very hard to do much as a T, because like look where Nafany is. He has to worry about that play through the doors. Every player in mid there has to worry about 2 different angles that they can be getting shot from. They have to worry about mid doors, and they have to worry about Cat, and if Tons wasn't clear, they would also have to worry about Tons, right? So there's so many angles you have to worry about, and it's so easy to get blinded. That's exactly where you want to catch them, and Mouz obviously did that like intentionally, right? That's the problem with playing off B though. Siren just comes through and gets 3 kills. But it should be round over. Oy, yeah. Jimfat, he can't run away there, right? But he doesn't really want to fight. That's hilarious. All right, look at the CT pistol now. Nafany just covering mid, so they're going to play weak on B, and when you look at that, it's a B rush. B rushes work at every level, folks, especially when you block headshot them instantly. But quick rotates do mean BetBoom has a chance here. But yeah, they're screwed now. Just spam through the smoke. In fact, trying to grab a kill. Nothing. I mean, this round's basically over. So keeping a couple of players with armor, especially if you kept them with 100 armor, meaning you can get head armor, is a big deal on CT side and can mean the difference between going for a force and not. So as I said, on anti-ecos, T's still will often go for the long take. Now, they're throwing a slightly different corner smoke. Let's see where that corner smoke lands. It's important, though. I've seen a lot of people have corner smokes that land on top of here. I think the key of a good long smoke is a smoke that gets around this corner slightly. So if you see where this lands specifically, right, it's going to just barely nudge its way around this corner. And that means that one of the plays CTs like to do is they'll get into the smoke, right-click a flash, and then come through here. And if you throw a bad smoke, like if you throw smokes that land up here that I've seen a lot of people throwing, you can throw them like instantly from spawn. You leave a gap, like just enough of a gap for a player here, so he can have like a good angle to catch the T's. But he can also like sneak up here and get here as well. It's just too easy for that player to get something done with that smoke that I think it's really important the smoke gets slightly around the corner. Because then it also impairs the CT's ability to kind of like push through it. It messes them up falling back. They're going to want to fall back hugging this corner, but you can just peek out and you can spam that a lot of the time too. I think it does make a really big difference where that smoke lands. So then you're obligated, basically, if you lose long, you essentially have to go back, take Cat. And they do it, but you have to think about the timing, right? Mouz, A key for Mouz, don't let that happen where they take cat, control it, no, and then they suss out that you're going long and then you go long, right? Same idea with them waiting in BetBoom waiting in tons. You have to be aware that like with BetBoom waiting in tons, the CTs weren't required to go aggressive, so they just didn't go aggressive, and they can wait in tons for quite a while. And more often than not, the CTs aren't gonna collapse on them quite that heavily. But once you lose long, as a CT side, you are basically required to go aggressive, right? So there's a bit of a timer if you have nobody elsewhere on the map that you just can't let the CTs, you can't wait forever. Usually that means the solution is to play a player in tunnels. But I think it makes a lot of sense when you're on anti-eco. A lot of the time, just go 5 long, take it, and then wait a little bit. And you actually can kind of catch them on that timing where, you know, we're not going long right away. So the CTs might pivot heavy towards that long play and be like, are they going to rush across? No. And then they're like, okay, let's probe tunnels. Let's take cat control. And then you catch them when they're going for that control because it's like, are they rushing long? We're ready for that. They're not rushing long. Okay, let's check where they are on the map. And then you rush long, right? You catch them in that kind of middle ground because 10, 20 seconds later, they would have been ready for that mid rush again. So that nade did. I mean, it's hard to T-side Dust2 nades. It's hard to get a lot of damage on them. There's not really a lot of spots where there's a heavy like frequency of CTs being there that you can also nade easily and they can't like jump out of. Interesting. They're gonna go for like a double probe in tunnels, Mac 10 and AK. This is kind of classic CS. You have the Mac 10 look to see if it's stacked. And I think they saw at least 2 people there. So they're like, okay, well, we already got a kill on cat. Max 2 players A, let's probe back there. And they're still ready to go out mid or go B if they need to. They can always fall back, right? That's why, like, theoretically, like, they're spaced too far, right? They can't trade. But the whole point is that they don't need to trade. The point is that if Xerxin dies and sees like 3-4 people, that Torshi can back up and survive, right? And they can just pivot back. So that's like the safest way to play any anti-eco. Although, you know, you can't always put yourself in that spot. You have to have a lot of control to do that, right? Because if you don't have full cat control and then you probe B, then you could still die to 1 player on cat. Like if you notice they're stacked 4B, well, the 5th player might be on cat. So you either take that with good enough utility, in which case the B stack can rotate back to A too quickly, or you take it with bad utility, in which case 1 player can still kind of mow you down a little bit. Or 2. Because, I mean, a B stack could just be 3 players, right? I think Mouz did that on their CT side, just a 3-man B stack. And then you, like, pivot off of that. Like, that's the worst case scenario. You pivot off, you're like, they're stacked B, they're stacked B. Because you don't ever really see all 5 when you think, like, when you're checking, right? You're like, they're stacked B, they're stacked B. And then it turns out it was only 3 people, and you, like, rush A, and you just get dumpstered by the 2 A players that are on cat because you didn't throw full utility. Anyways. This is a jump spot that you should be doing. It's almost impossible to get killed on that jump spot. You can spot people like doing stuff in mid, and you can spot people on cat like that as well. This nade also insanely effective. It's probably one of CT side. It's probably one of the strongest nades. This nade into lower, if you can have a timing on it. I'm interested. I just wanted to check what happened here. What Xerxin did here. Does he smoke CT? Like, how does this CT smoke land? There's just a CT smoke here for some reason. He just walks out. Okay. Why is there a CT smoke? Someone must throw it, right? Do the CTs throw it? Yeah, the CTs. Oh, that's a CT smoke. Okay. And Xerxin comes through lower. Oh, does he see the barrel? Because you can see the barrel from lower a lot of the time. Here's that guy on cat. He wants to beat that mid rotate because a lot of the time what happens is you'll boost a player cat, and then the player that boosted cat is your mid player, right? Because you want to still have a heavy long, right? Because if one of your long players boosts a player cat, then you have 1 long who with no support, basically. Hard to get anything done. So if you just pivot a 4th player A, odds of them rushing B or mid, pretty low, right? So you pivot a 4th player A, comes back to cover mid. You know, you're not losing too much. Except for Xerxin walks out on you because he knows that you're doing that. Nice little nade of the smoke there. And they're 4v3. They're still trying to, they know there's only 1 player B. So they're really just trying to find that because they don't have a smoke mid to B, I don't think. Or yeah, I think they had to rotate a smoke out, right? I think Brawlin probably threw that smoke. Xerxin didn't have a smoke, right? Yeah, Brawlin shows up, throws the smoke, and they're still like they're trying to figure out where that B player is so they can just trade on him. And I actually like that play. I feel like it's underutilized. This style of play. So I'm just gonna rewind it quickly. This style of play where what you're doing is you've got Brawlin and Xerxin. They look like they're doing nothing. They kind of are. But their goal is don't allow a rotate, right? Don't allow this, like, the pivot back for the CTs to rotate and stack over to B. So you're locking the CTs into a 1B situation. And this B player has to be a little worried about both sides. Then you just have two good players, especially if one of them is your Opper, which I'm not sure if it is, but you have two good players walk into the site and you play that 2v1. And it's like, if you win the 2v1, which you should win the vast majority of the time, right? You just instantly win the round because the rotate's locked down. They shouldn't even try for it, right? I feel like that's not utilized enough in general. It's just a really, really good way to close out a round when you kind of know their setup. And a lot of the time you're going to know their setup in those sorts of situations. Like when Xerxin comes out mid and kills that rotate to mid, you basically know their setup at that point, right? You've seen a guy on cat, they've seen a utility long, there was at least 3A, plus the guy rotated through CT. There could have been 2B, but I think based on the information they had, I think they knew there really wasn't 2A, or wasn't 2B. So back on to pistols, I can't lie, I feel like BetBoom's kind of gotten screwed by, like, a little bit in terms of spawns. Like, I feel like Mouz has just had the good spawns, like, when they've wanted them. That's interesting. They actually nade that smoke to see through it too, to catch someone that might be falling back. That's actually really clever. Because usually what you would do as a CT is you might consider contesting a little bit. And with that smoke up, you can contest a little bit and then pretty much safely fall back. But now if you can nade that smoke, right, especially if it, again, gets around that corner, very slightly gets around that corner, you can nade that smoke and then and catch people as they're falling back. So that's what I've seen teams try and combat. So one of the things that I really like that teams have done, they throw the cross smoke plus they throw a CT smoke. So there's two smokes here. You can only nade one of them, obviously, and so you've basically taken away a lot of the ability for the CTs to do. Why is this not pausing my game? Okay. So the CTs usually what they'll do is they'll leave nades and spawn. And then they'll use those to nade the cross. But if you smoke here and here, they have to choose which one they want to nade, which is hard. Then you can combine that with a molly, and because mollies are so big in CS, you can basically molly out like this whole area and give the CTs essentially nowhere to play. And I really like that as a play, but it does require you to have two smokes. And the thing is, not only does it require you to have two smokes when you want to cross, but it's a big investment. So when you do something like Mouz was doing there, where Mouz is crossing with one player. Do you really want to be double smoking when you're crossing with one player? Like, that's a massive investment for, like, the odds of getting killed, like a nade hitting the smoke at the exact moment someone's crossing, because it doesn't take very long to cross. The odds of a nade hitting that smoke in that timing is pretty low, right? And so then if you only have one player crossing, do you want to double smoke? Maybe not. And that means if you have everybody crossing, double smoking would be a tell, right? So you have to, it's like, ends up being its own huge problem, you know? So here, they go for the op peek, well-timed flash to push that opper back, and that requires a lot of investment for the CTs to counter that. And so you know the CTs have at least two players long with the way they held that. And good information that they had the opper there. But the opper actually got back, and that's just one opper, I believe, right? Yeah, the opper actually got back to mid just like in time to kill Torchy going for that mid play. So now I think they're just kind of going back into a standard play. They're going to try and pressure Cat, clear it out. Have to make a bit of a gamble because it is 4v5. So the question is, does Xerxin go in here first? And I think 4v5 with 3 players long, kind of have to gamble Xerxin going in here first and hope that he gets the kill, and he does. And that'll a lot of the time pull an long player over, or it'll at least make sure that this opper will not be looking here, because sometimes an Opera will post there, especially with the guy Cat. He'll post here for a while, knowing that the T's, when you go out long late, a lot of the time you just walk out, right? So it'll at least make sure that they're not doubled on long and force like a duel. Siren's just gonna have to take that fight, and Siren he does win it. But now it's got the Opera trapped, right? He can't get away because there was a guy close Cat. Plus he knows there's guys long. He's trapped. He has to go forward for the fight, and if he misses that shot, he just gets killed. And then all of a sudden you're in a 2v2. So round can pivot like pretty quickly. 7-11. Scroll through the quick pause. And Mouz, again, has a long spawn. Good time to have a long spawn, too. You're trying to reset the CTs, essentially. They've just won a round. They had 3 players alive, but, you know, they're not feeling too hot money-wise. And it's actually a tech pause, but still, I'm assuming they're going to go for a long play here. And good question if the CTs are going to stack 4 long. This would be an interesting round to stack 4 long. Because you just won kind of the Mouz just probed long last round, right? Looking at what your hold was. And their hold last round was a little iffy, right? It was very much a reactionary hold. Although, of course, they had the Opper go for the peak early, right? And that's something you generally just do once in a while. So I think you can assume it's not their standard long hold, but they were kind of like on a reactionary long hold there a little bit, even then. So I could see a long play from Mouz making a lot of sense, and then I could see a 4-man stack from BetBoom making a lot of sense as well. But it gets a little awkward, I feel like, once you've done like that long of a pause. I feel like everyone's kind of questioning what you should be doing. So this is the old school smoke. Zorte is again going to go for that peak, and this time he actually gets a kill off of it. I think it was blind too, wasn't he? It was a good flash. And now you can, this is something that I remember back in like 2015, 2016 would happen all the time. You would just get a player out to the bin here, and he can kind of flash for himself, but he can also have people flash for him. And then you have to kind of overcommit to long, or you have to gamble that your long player is going to win this duel. But Shuhei is in a really interesting spot. Ooh, nice. That smoke was so well placed that it was like there were so many spots that he could be at. And now because they didn't overcommit to long to try and hold against that, and they allowed the 1v1 to happen, that player loses. Then you've got to rotate back, and they've got no cat control. Siren does win the duel on long, which you would expect given the situation, but they still have a 3v2, right? And now the CTs, they're thinking they probably got to go for this. This is a pretty important round for them to go for it, but it's not the greatest situation to be in ever. And if they lose this, they're in a terrible situation. But they do win a couple. I mean, retaking from long and elevator is just strong in general, especially with those low numbers where the T's can't be holding everything. They have to worry about so many angles. Oh, those are the most awkward 1v1s. Oh my god, those are so awkward. Looking straight down, straight up. So again, okay, I thought they dropped Siren the op and they were going to go for that long peak again. That would be interesting to see a team that just continually goes for that long op peak over and over and over. So you'll notice Mouz delayed here for a second. I really want to point this out because I've seen this. I had people submit demos recently because I'm going to be making a Dust2 video, and they go into long right away. Right away with bad spawns, sorry. They go into long doors. If you have bad spawns, don't go into long doors right away. That's when you're going to get naded, right? That's when you're going to get mollied, right? You want to give it a little bit of time and then go in. So they waited like half a second, then went in, and they were looking to pivot off of that smoke. They were clearly looking to pop through that smoke, which is a clever play. Obviously doesn't work, but it is a clever play. But now 3v5, I mean, they've got pistols. They just really... Goal here... win a gunfight, like just get a lucky kill, and then maybe you can start turning it back in your favor if you can just win a gunfight against someone. It's the smoke. They wait out the smoke for the nade, which you're gonna have to do sometimes. Although I think someone just made noise, so they definitely know there's at least a couple players here. Interesting to wait out this smoke also, because walking around this smoke, people get destroyed walking around the smoke. There's so many angles you have to worry about, and the CTs clearly have an advantage. Oh my god. Wow. Okay, just really clean. Just so much patience from Mouz. Like, they know when they can just wait, and they don't have to panic. They don't have to run around a smoke. They don't have to run through a smoke. They just wait out the smoke. Smoke goes down, and then the CTs at that point, because Mouz have been so quiet, they're like, where are they at this point, right? They're starting to like question it. And then Mouz just sitting on the other side of the smoke. They even get a really nice angle behind the barrels there, which is hard to deal with sometimes as a T coming up cat. It's going to be hard to deal with as a CT on cat also, right? And then they just hit some nice shots. This is really well played. So that's going to be, I believe it's going to land on top of the thing. It's almost like a hinge smoke, but slightly different. But it's supposed to come down more. So they must have missed it slightly. That's the problem with that smoke, is it's a little finicky. But it's meant to be basically like a hinge smoke. But because of the way it lands, it shouldn't allow someone to walk out to Xbox, which a hinge smoke in CS2 will. Kind of gives them cover to walk out and maybe like even aggress lower. So again, I believe BetBoom took long here, went back, doubled cat. You can't do that too often. I mean, you can get kind of abused if you do it too often, but you want to do it sometimes where you actually do just gamble back on a cat, give up long. And that's kind of what, if you remember back a couple rounds, that's what Mouz was doing when they walked out long. Here's Siren. Nice timing. Yeah, he just catches the timing. He sees Jimfat jump across. He tries to make sure that he can't get into a good spot after that. And then Jimfat tries to double back, but the molly's a little too late. So what I meant was, a few rounds back, they had walked out long. Because if your opponents are on long, it's especially with only one player, it's still good. You can trade on that guy a lot of the time. It's not like, I mean, it's not what you necessarily want, but it's not bad, right? Especially if you walk into a rifle, you're going to trade on him a lot. But it also means that, like, the CTs, if they go back and double cat and give up long, then you're going to get that information for free. Whereas if they double cat and you as Ts make noise coming out long, then they know exactly what's going on, right? So just balancing, you know, against potential CT setups and hoping that you kind of walk into the right one at the right time. So again, that's the benefit of the way that BetBoom is playing long, is that they can fake their same long control with less players, because they're not doing like the standard, like the double molly, a molly long doors plus a molly here. Well, you have to have at least 2 players in long to throw that. Plus, usually you have flashes, like that's standard, like the flashes here and here. You can throw it from here or here. That means you generally, for that long control, the Ts can track 3 players, or at least 2 players, but a lot of time you can track 3. But if you open up instead with the smoke, then you can fake this even with 1 player if you smoke and then you molly this every round. But they just faked it with no players by throwing the smoke and then backing up and not throwing the molly, because they're not throwing the molly a lot of the time. And that's actually one of the benefits of having an opper. If you have the op have the best spawn and go long, right? One of the benefits of having this is your opponents can't know, oh, there was no utility long, they're not playing long, right? Sometimes you have no utility long because your opper's there. That's one of the biggest reasons that play is really effective. And also, it's just a great play to get a kill and back up, but it has the additional benefit of your opponents can't know. So Mouz now, a little bit worried about cat, a little bit worried about long. Like, they have to assume that the CTs have long control. But they also have to worry about cat, and I don't think they have amazing utility. Oh, okay, the round just ended. Yeah, that explains why they dropped off cat there. Because they must have called not live, and they dropped off cat because the round had just they didn't want to let Mouz know that they weren't going for long control there. Makes perfect sense. So here they're again gonna go for this peek in mid. I believe he got spotted again, but peeking it a lower, also really effective. Although some players are really good at this peek. Some players will just mow your head off. They'll just take it off instantly. But one of the nice things about that peek is also, you make that peek, take the shot, instant 50 damage from a nade, like almost 100%, almost 100% of the time. You just like miss, nade, done, like easy, no problem, free ADR. So this is the setup that you're kind of expecting most of the time, right? Well, this player is going to be in like this area. This player is going to be in this area, or sometimes he'll be here or here. I mean, sometimes he'll be like, if the opera's up on cat, he might be like here also, or he might be with it. But, you know, like in a standard passive setup for CTs, you'll have a player in these 2 areas, and then you'll have a player B, player basically here, like, you know, that's rotating to here. So it's like, you know, this, and then you have your long player who's going to be somewhere here, usually. Sometimes here, sometimes here, sometimes here. Right? Standard setup. It's been the standard setup for a very long time. That CT player is he just enables so much control, because he can move between A and B instead of having like these setups where you'll see, especially in pugs, you see a lot of teams go like one pit, one here, which we did see in this game, but they'll do that like consistently. And then when you end up having this, it's like, well, if your opponents just smoke mid to B, you're kind of fucked, because you can't, like, this rotate is so long, right? So having this player CT most of the time, CT elevator, really effective. And also, you have to be worried about players walking out mid, right? Like, walking out mid is a dangerous play. And so as the mid player, you're either worried about that, or now you've got B being weak because he pivoted back over, and now B is weak, but Chiron's going to get a 3K spray down. I mean, well, you know, if you're just going to do that, then sure. But I mean, backplat isn't a gimme. You know, backplat isn't a complete gimme. You can definitely go backplat and still die. And they just end up saving. And now you go for the 4 long control from no, it's the 4A. Just a boost. Yeah, it's actually this. We remember back, this is the first gun round. They did the same thing. This smoke, Xertion was out mid already at this point though. That's the difference. Xertion was super quick out mid. But now they're just going to look for this play mid because they just saw only one player B. They're going to look to try and isolate that player. Shuhei with the balls of steel, making contact on that B player. Damn, actually, that is a smart play. Fuck. That's really clever. Because, he got up so close before making contact. This happens to people all the time. So he gets up so close before making contact that the odds of an opper, and that's not Nafny, but an opper holding this angle, this is a really common angle for an opper to hold, right? Very common. Or a rifler to hold, like, you know, be in this area. So if you make contact here and then you just instantly pivot, the communication probably hasn't come over yet for this guy to pivot and look the other direction. He's just not going to be ready for it. And is this guy really going to be taking that fight if he's not already holding the angle? Is he going to take that fight instantly? No, he's jump spotting. Pivot out, catch Nafny just before he's ready. He's like looking over, but he's just not ready yet. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, and then they have the explode ready right behind it. And then they've even got Brawlin ready to lock down if they try and save. Although Siren's just one step ahead. Nicely done. Even 3v4. Maybe it's because they were thinking of saving. He might have just like known that Brawlin likes doing that. Or Brawlin might have made some noise earlier. But now, this is when you almost get baited into the 3v3. Like, I don't think you can really go for this. You're just not winning this, right? But it's like, it's 3v3, man. 3v3, we gotta go for this. It's 3v3. But it's like, fuck, dude. What do you have? Oh, Molly Smoke Flash. That's a lot. But if the T's have good position, Molly Smoke Flash is simply not enough. I almost feel like strategically you can try to bait your opponents, like, the Brawlin, go die. That way they go for this 3v3. I know they're not doing that, but that would be like peak Astralis might make a play like that, where like, we're winning this 3v3 if they try to be 100% of the time. So Brawlin, you're just going to go die because it's going to bait them into going for the play they shouldn't be making. That's like, when I hear about like stories of Prime Astralis, of the mind games they were going for, that's the type of shit I feel like Prime Astralis was doing. Like, I don't think they ever did anything like that. Maybe, but like, that's a Prime Astralis moment where you're like, yeah, we're winning this 3v3 every 100% of the time, so we're just gonna bait them into going for it. And a lot of teams do get baited in going for those types of plays. That is a very awkward situation. I do like this play. This is much less common. But this play where you just send one guy out, you throw enough utility for him, didn't have the best spawns on the rest of their team. And this is a play I've seen. Oh, you know what this is? Oh, that's sick. Okay, so this is a play I see a lot, actually. Okay, I've seen in a lot of FPL games. So the reason that I don't think this smoke is something you can throw every round is because if you throw this smoke every round, Brawlin can do exactly what he does here. They throw a smoke on this corner, and they throw a molly that lands behind it. So basically the CTs, I think the smoke lands like this, and then the molly lands like this. So it's even hard to fight through the smoke. The molly takes up almost all the position. And you can fight this with like 1 or 2 players And the CTs basically can't contest unless they crossed right away. But the problem with crossing right away is if you're throwing this smoke and crossing right away, there is no danger for the Ts to just come straight out and kill you as you're crossing, right? They can just cross this box basically for free because this molly is never going to damage them, and you're not nading very often because you're just going to blow out the smoke if you nade it, right? It basically, the Ts are incentivized to come out here and shoot you crossing, so it's a little more dangerous, right? So if you're getting smoked off here, you throw this smoke and this molly behind it, and the smoke and the molly behind it, and you can have one player that can put a shitload of pressure, or you can just almost freely take long, because you can only really have like one player get through, because you're required to have a player back here throwing flashes. That's going to be this guy. He has to be back there throwing the smoke, then throwing the flashes. It's basically every time. So you have max 2 players, and you're basically going to have max 1 guy fighting you without being at a massive disadvantage, because if they want to fight, if the second player wants to fight, they want to fight along this back wall, but then they can't, so they have to come through the smoke, and you can be up here, right? You can get up to here and fight them, and if they come through that smoke, they're fucked, and if they can't come along the back wall, so you just get a player here, and this is just a winning duel 100% of the time. Right? So I think that's the goal, is to get Brawlin to just molly that and get up here and fight here, because they know that this is getting smoked every round. And so BetBoom is like, late in the half, you know what they're probably going to do? They might try and play a counter to the smoke strat, right? Because I think that is basically a counter to the smoke strat. So what do? They molly it, and then they're looking to fight with the molly, and Brawlin gets caught out and just gets killed because he's expecting that he can go for that molly and then maybe catch the guy crossing pit and back up freely, right? That's actually like the play. That looks like the play he's going for. Maybe the idea is like, if I catch a guy crossing pit, I'm just going to get the kill and back up. And if I don't, then I'm going to move up and fight from like here, and I'm going to play close, right? Because with a good spawn, you can, if you come out here, you're going to see the guy cross. Oh, yeah. Oh my God. I'm thinking this play, as I'm thinking of it, it's getting smarter and smarter. Yeah, it's genius. I mean, and BetBoom is just a step ahead. Fuck, that's genius. So yeah, the play from Brawlin must be molly, and you have enough flashes. If there's a guy crossing the pit, you kill him and you back up, right? And if there isn't a guy crossing the pit, you can get out here, or I mean, the plan is to get out there. That's a good play. But the other plan could just be to back up also anyways, like regardless, just get information and back up. But I think the plan was probably to get up to here. And then you can fight here, and maybe we send a second guy long to support you, so you can fight there. And then BetBoom is like, we've been throwing that smoke a lot. It's getting to the end of the half. They might be trying to counter it. Let's throw a molly. So although they do lose the guy going to pit, they do guarantee that if that play is made, that at least they're going to get the trade. And the goal is that like Brawlin hopefully is blind and doesn't kill the guy crossing pit. Like that would be optimal. I don't think their goal, like I don't think they're realizing, I don't think they're fully expecting that play. What they're probably just expecting is they're expecting like maybe some sort of counter to the smoke, or maybe they're just kind of like in their setup. They're like, well, once in a while we throw the molly. Most of the time I throw the smoke. And Mouz just has a really clever kind of counter to that smoke, and BetBoom just have the right moment, the right read on a time to throw the molly instead. I don't know, that's super nice. I really like that. Oh my god. Oh my god. This round falls apart, man. Oh, he just drops off the ledge, messes up the flash. Xershin's there, hears it. Oh, but the timing, I mean, the timing is not unintentional, right? Just to be, the timing here is not, from Xershin, is not unintentional. So Xershin is ready. They're really giving a lot of confidence to Xershin. I'm interested to see, like, if they played Spirit, for example. I feel like Spirit could just have Donk. I don't know where he plays on this map, but this feels like a spot where Donk would want to play. Just walk back up and just take these duels against Xershin, right? Because Xershin is just so comfortable here. And you do have technically the advantage as a T, because the CTs are going to be left eye peeking you here, so they're going to be wider. And it's very close to the wall, so the left eye peek means a lot. But Xershin is very comfortable here. And look at that. They start throwing the long nades, right? And that's when Xershin, because the CTs are going to be pivoting over, the CTs are going to be looking over, and Zorta he isn't in the right spot. He wants to be around the corner. He wants to be just a little bit further around this corner so that he can turn around and peek out, and he could kill Xershin there. And that could have changed the outcome of the round. If Zorta was just a little forward, throws the flash, peeks back, he could kill Xershin, and if he kills Xershin, this round looks very different. It might be going to OT. But I just want to, I wanted to highlight that that's not luck, right? Entirely. It's intentional. It's planned out. They start throwing the long utility, and that's when Xerxes knows that the likelihood of someone looking his direction is lower. So he's got a chance to catch someone off guard. Anyways, thanks for watching. I was gonna review this anyways, right? So I figured I'd review this and record it while I'm reviewing it. If you want to see more, I'm going to be trying to post probably one a week of these on my Patreon, and I might try and post one a week also on my second channel. I think I'm going to try and re-alive this channel and actually start posting content, because I've been coaching Austin's team a little bit, and I feel like my understanding of the game is getting back up the pace, because I've been kind of like not competing for quite a while, so coaching really helps me get back onto that level of like really analyzing the game effectively.